On Christmas Eve, my father banned me from family dinner because I chose special operations over marriage and kids. My mother stood behind him crying but said nothing. 8 years later, I walked into my sister's military graduation as the commanding officer of Joint Special Operations Command, and when her Special Forces colonel saw me, he snapped to attention. "Ma'am, Elite Operations Commander." The look of shock on my family's faces when they realized who I'd become. That was the moment I knew every door they'd slammed had led me to command the most elite warriors in the world. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Commander Alexandra Kane, and I was born into a family that believed a woman's highest achievement was a successful marriage and beautiful children. But that's not the complete story. The first time I mentioned wanting to join the military, I was 14. My father, a successful insurance executive, looked at me like I'd announced plans to ruin my life. "Beautiful girls don't throw away their futures playing soldier," he said, adjusting his wedding ring meaningfully. "The military is for girls who can't find good husbands." My mother, who'd been homecoming queen before becoming a full-time wife and mother, shook her head sadly. "Alexandra, sweetheart, you're far too pretty for that. Military service is what plain girls do when they can't attract the right kind of man." They had my entire future planned. College to find a husband, like my older sister Jennifer had done. Marriage by 25, children by 30, like every woman in our family for generations. Definitely something that would look perfect at church socials and country club gatherings. When neighbors asked about their children, they'd proudly discuss Jennifer's engagement to a banker and my younger brother Tyler's football scholarship. But when it came to my military interests, they'd quickly change the subject. Outside our suburban community, their social circle shared the same expectations for women. The Hendersons next door, the Millers from the country club, the Johnsons who owned the local car dealership, they all treated their daughters' marriages like Olympic victories. Early engagement meant successful parenting. Military service meant family failure. At high school, I lived a contradiction. I was homecoming queen, volleyball captain, and honor roll student. But at home, none of that mattered when weighed against my obsession with military service. My mother once said to her garden club, loud enough for me to hear, "Alexandra's gorgeous, but she has this strange fixation with the Army. We're hoping college will help her find a nice boy and forget these tomboy ideas." I remember the day I brought home my Army ROTC scholarship offer, like it was etched in stone. Full ride to West Point, one of only 12 women selected from our state that year. I was 17, holding what I thought was my golden ticket to everything I'd ever dreamed of. My father barely glanced at it before tossing it aside. "That's nice, sweetheart, but let's talk about real colleges where you can meet quality young men. I've already spoken to alumni contacts at several good schools." My mother tried a gentler but equally devastating approach. "Darling, you don't understand what you'd be giving up. Military service will make you hard, unfeminine. You'll miss out on the best years for finding a husband and starting a family." She pulled out bridal magazines and engagement announcements from the local paper. "Is this really what you want to sacrifice for playing soldier?" But I saw something entirely different in those military academy brochures. I saw women officers who dedicated their lives to protecting others and leading elite forces. I saw strength, honor, and purpose that transcended traditional expectations. While my family saw limitations, I saw the opportunity to serve something greater than suburban domesticity. Tyler tried to be supportive, at least privately. "I think it's badass," he whispered one night when our parents were arguing downstairs about my stubbornness. But even he didn't really understand. "Maybe you could be a military nurse? That way you could still help people but stay feminine." That's when I realized this wasn't just about career choices. This was about fundamentally different definitions of what women could achieve and become. At West Point, I thrived in ways my family couldn't fathom. While they attended baby showers and wedding receptions, I was studying advanced tactics, mastering combat training, and pushing my physical limits beyond what I thought possible. During holiday breaks, I'd return home in my cadet uniform, only to be asked to change into something more feminine before family gatherings. "People will think we raised you wrong," my mother would say, though I understood the truth. They were ashamed of my choices. The contrast became increasingly painful each semester. At the academy, I was respected for my tactical brilliance and leadership under pressure. I ranked in the top 10% of my class, served as company commander, and earned recognition for my performance in advanced combat training. My instructors saw future special operations potential. My fellow cadets saw natural warrior instincts. But at home, none of that translated into pride. During my sophomore year, Jennifer had her dream wedding to a successful banker. The ceremony was a lavish affair, with 300 guests celebrating what my parents called the perfect start to a beautiful life. When guests asked about me, my parents would mention I was away at school, but never specified which one. When I tried to share stories about tactical exercises or leadership challenges, the conversation would quickly shift to Jennifer's honeymoon plans or Tyler's dating life. "Alexandra's always been the independent one," my father would say with a strained smile. "Very strong-willed." The word strong-willed became their code for unfeminine and difficult. Tyler was caught in the middle, trying to bridge the growing gap. "Tell them about your combat training," he'd whisper encouragingly. But when I mentioned military strategy or special operations preparation, the room would fall silent, and someone would inevitably redirect to more appropriate subjects. I started noticing how they talked about other military families in our community. When the Patterson family's daughter joined the Air Force, my parents would speak about her in pitying tones. "Such a waste of beauty," my mother would sigh. "She could have been married to a doctor by now." When Colonel Morrison's wife attended our neighborhood events, they'd treat her politely but privately discuss her sacrificed femininity. Military service wasn't seen as honorable in their world. It was seen as a failure to fulfill a woman's true purpose, marriage and motherhood. The breaking point came during my junior year. I'd been selected for the Elite Airborne Ranger Preparation Program, training that would qualify me for special operations assignments. It was an extraordinary opportunity that only the top 5% of cadets ever received. When I called home excited to share this achievement, my father's response was devastating. "Alexandra, we need to have a serious discussion about your future. This military obsession has gone on long enough. You can still transfer to a normal college, find a nice young man, and have the life you were meant to have." "Dad, this isn't an obsession. This is my calling to elite service." "Your calling?" His voice escalated. "Playing war games while real women are building families? Alexandra, you're wasting your beauty and your youth on something that will never make you happy." My mother took the phone, her voice gentle but heartbroken. "Sweetheart, we're genuinely worried about you. This fixation on military combat isn't natural for girls. Maybe you should talk to Dr. Williams about these aggressive impulses." That phrase haunted me. Not help us understand your passion or explain your dreams. Maybe I should talk to someone about my aggressive impulses, as if my dedication to military excellence was a psychological disorder requiring professional intervention. That summer during Ranger preparation, surrounded by the most elite warriors in training, I felt more at home than I ever had in my family's suburban paradise. These people understood sacrifice, excellence, and the honor of serving something greater than personal comfort. I was living two completely different realities, and I knew eventually I'd have to choose which one defined who I really was. My graduation from West Point should have been one of the proudest moments of my life. I finished third in my class, earned the Combat Leadership Excellence Award, and was commissioned as a second lieutenant with orders to report to the 75th Ranger Regiment, one of the most elite units in the Army. The ceremony was held on a brilliant June morning, with thousands of families cheering as their sons and daughters crossed the stage to receive their commissions and begin their military careers. My family attended, but their presence felt more like a wake than a celebration. While other parents wept with pride, taking countless photographs and cheering enthusiastically, mine sat like stone statues. My father checked his watch throughout the ceremony, occasionally shaking his head. My mother dabbed her eyes, but not from joy, from what looked like grief. Only Tyler seemed genuinely excited, pumping his fist when my name was called for the leadership award. After the ceremony, As families gathered for congratulatory celebrations, I watched the Chen family embrace their daughter. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. A new infantry officer, with overwhelming emotion. "We're so proud," her father beamed. "You're going to lead soldiers with honor and protect our freedom." When I approached my family, my father's opening words cut like a blade. "Well, that's finished. Now you can get this military nonsense out of your system and start living like a woman." "Dad, this isn't finished. This is just the beginning. I'm joining the Rangers." My mother stepped forward, touching my arm with desperate hope. "Alexandra, you've proven you're strong enough. You can still change your mind. You could get married, have children, be happy like other women." That's when I realized they'd never seen my military commission as real. To them, West Point was an expensive 4-year phase, not the foundation of my military career. They'd spent my entire education waiting for me to grow out of this tomboy stage and embrace traditional femininity. The real devastation came that evening at what should have been my celebration dinner. Instead of congratulating me, my family orchestrated what could only be described as an intervention. My parents had invited Dr. Patricia Williams, a family therapist, along with Jennifer and her banker husband, and Tyler. They'd arranged the dining room like a therapy session, with concerned faces all focused on saving me. "Alexandra," my father began, "we're gathered here because we love you, and we're terrified about your future." Dr. Williams leaned forward with clinical concern. "Your family has expressed deep worries about your continued commitment to military combat roles. They believe you might be using military structure to avoid traditional feminine responsibilities and relationships." I looked around the circle. Jennifer avoided my eyes, clearly uncomfortable but compliant. Tyler looked ready to bolt. My mother was already crying. "We think you're running away from being a woman." My mother sobbed. "First to this military academy, now to combat units where you'll be surrounded by men and violence. When will you come home and embrace the beautiful life God intended for you?" "I'm not running from anything. I'm serving my country as a commissioned officer." My father's composure finally exploded. "Serving your country? Alexandra, you're throwing away your beauty, your youth, your chance at happiness, while other women your age are finding love and starting families. Jennifer already has a baby on the way. What do you have to show for 4 years, except a uniform and a gun?" That's when I grasped the full scope of their delusion. They genuinely believed that military service was incompatible with being a woman, even after I'd graduated from one of the most prestigious institutions in America. Dr. Williams spoke again. "Alexandra, your family worries that you're using military aggression to avoid the vulnerability required for intimate relationships and motherhood." I stood up, my hands shaking with rage and heartbreak. "Vulnerability? You think leading soldiers in combat doesn't require vulnerability?" The room fell completely silent. For the first time, I'd voiced what we all understood. I didn't belong with people who saw my greatest achievement as my greatest failure as a woman. After walking out of that intervention, I didn't speak to my family for 13 months. I threw myself into my assignment with the 75th Ranger Regiment at Fort Benning, training for the most elite combat operations in the world. The work was brutal, dangerous, and exactly what I'd trained for. Everything my family said would destroy my femininity and future happiness. But their words echoed in my mind during quiet moments. Throwing away your beauty, running from being a woman, avoiding intimate relationships. I began meticulously documenting everything, not because I planned to prove anything to them, but because I needed evidence that I wasn't broken or unnatural. I saved every fitness report, every commendation, every evaluation that praised my leadership and tactical excellence. My performance reviews were exceptional. Lieutenant Kane demonstrates extraordinary combat leadership and tactical innovation. Recommend for Special Forces assessment. Outstanding warrior with unlimited potential for elite operations command. I kept these in a private file, proof that contradicted my family's narrative about my damaged femininity. During my rare calls with Tyler, our conversations carefully avoided the obvious tension. "How's Army life treating you?" he'd ask cautiously. "I'm excelling, Tyler. Leading Rangers, making life and death decisions. Mom asks about you sometimes. She worries you'll never be happy." "Does she? Or does she worry that I'm too happy to abandon this path for marriage? The silence always provided the answer. I learned through Tyler that my parents had been telling their social circle I was getting this military phase out of my system and would likely leave the army once I met the right man and remembered what really matters. They'd even preserved my childhood bedroom in pink and white, as if my military career was an extended rebellion. Jennifer visited me once at Fort Benning with her newborn daughter. We met for lunch near the base. She seemed genuinely curious about my life, asking about ranger training and combat preparation. For a moment, I hoped maybe one family member might finally understand. "The leadership experience sounds intense," she admitted. "But Alexandra, don't you want what I have? A husband who adores you, a beautiful baby, a home where you're cherished. This military thing proves you're strong, but it's not sustainable for women long term." Even Jennifer, who I'd hoped might be different, saw my career as temporary. A phase to outgrow, rather than a calling to embrace. That conversation crystallized something crucial. My family's inability to accept my choices wasn't about concern for my well-being. It was about their own identity and worldview. Having a daughter in elite combat forces challenged their beliefs about femininity, happiness, and what constituted a fulfilling life for women. I began preparing for the possibility that this divide might become permanent. I established complete financial independence, rejecting any family support. I built relationships with mentors in special operations who became my chosen family, senior officers who understood dedication, sacrifice, and that strength had nothing to do with traditional gender roles. Colonel Maria Santos, my battalion commander, became particularly influential. She'd faced similar family pressure throughout her career. "Some families can't see beyond their own limitations," she told me during one of our mentoring sessions. "Your job isn't to make them understand femininity. Your job is to serve with excellence and let your achievements speak for themselves." I started keeping a journal, not about my family's rejection, but about my professional aspirations. I wanted to qualify for Delta Force. I wanted to lead special operations missions. I wanted to command elite forces and prove that women could excel in the most demanding military roles. Tech. For the first time, I was charting a future based entirely on my own vision, not my family's expectations of womanhood. I was becoming the warrior I'd always envisioned myself being, even if it meant becoming unrecognizable to the people who'd raised me. The woman my family had tried to save was precisely who I was meant to become. 4 years into my military career, I achieved something that fundamentally changed everything: selection for Delta Force and promotion to captain. At 26, I became one of only 3 women ever accepted into the Army's most elite special operations unit, commanding the most highly trained warriors in the world. The day I received the notification, I was completing a classified training exercise at an undisclosed location. Colonel Santos called me into her secure office, her expression serious but her eyes radiating fierce pride. "Kane, you've been selected for the unit. Your performance in special operations and tactical leadership caught the attention of some very important people at JSOC." She handed me the classified orders, and I read them twice before the magnitude sank in. Captain Alexandra Kane, Delta Force Operational Detachment, reporting directly to Joint Special Operations Command. A position that fewer than 100 people in the world held, and I'd earned it through pure excellence. For the first time since graduation, I felt compelled to contact my family. Surely this would prove that my path wasn't destroying my life or my worth as a woman. This was validation from the highest levels of military leadership that I belonged among the elite. I called Tyler first. His excitement was genuine, but mixed with fear. "Alexandra, that's incredible, but also terrifying. You're going to be doing the most dangerous missions in the world. Tyler, do you think Mom and Dad would want to know about this?" There was a long pause. "I think they should know. This is huge, even if they don't understand what it means." I called home that evening, my heart racing as the phone rang. My mother answered, and her voice immediately filled with anxiety when she heard mine. "Alexandra, oh sweetheart, it's so good to hear from you. We've been praying for you constantly." Mom, I have significant news. Career-defining news. Are you finally ready to come home? Have you met someone special? No, Mom. I've been selected for Delta Force and promoted to captain. I'm now commanding the most elite special operations forces in the military. The silence stretched endlessly. I could hear her sharp intake of breath. Mom? Delta Force? Her voice was barely a whisper. Alexandra, that sounds like the most dangerous thing in the world. When my father took the phone, his response was even more devastating. Captain of what? Alexandra, this proves exactly what we've been saying. You're so deep in this military delusion that you can't see you're throwing your life away. No man will ever want to marry a woman who kills people for a living. They couldn't even acknowledge my extraordinary achievement without immediately attacking my worth as a woman. That weekend, I stood on the training grounds of our classified facility, watching the most elite warriors in the world prepare for missions that would never make the news. These operators trusted me with their lives, respected my tactical decisions, and followed my leadership without question. I called Colonel Santos, who'd become my most trusted mentor. Maria, I think I need to accept that my family will never see this as anything but failure. Alexandra, some families can't recognize greatness because they're limited by their own fears. But your Delta family sees it. Your operators see it. JSOC sees it. That's what matters. She was absolutely right. The special operations community had become my real family. My fellow operators celebrated my achievements without reservation. My commanders invested in my development because they recognized my potential for senior special operations leadership. The unit itself had embraced me completely. Moving to our classified compound felt like arriving at my true home. My quarters were Spartan but purposeful, surrounded by the most capable and dedicated warriors on Earth. I sent my family a generic postcard, serving with honor, finally where I belong. My mother's response came weeks later. We're praying you'll find your way back to the woman God intended you to be. I filed that letter away. There would be no going back, because this woman was exactly who God had intended me to become. The call came at 03:00 hours during my third month with Delta Force. Tyler's voice was panicked, cutting through the encrypted communication system as I prepared for a classified mission briefing. Alexandra, something's wrong with Mom. She's had a complete breakdown and is in the psychiatric ward. The doctors think it's severe anxiety and depression. Dad says it's because you're doing such dangerous work that she can't sleep or function. I was scheduled to lead a high-priority operation in 6 hours, but the familiar weight of family guilt crashed over me. Despite everything, she was still my mother, and somehow my elite military service was being blamed for her mental health crisis. How serious is her condition? I asked, checking my watch and knowing I had critical mission preparations to complete. Serious enough that she's been involuntarily committed. The doctors are discussing long-term treatment. Dad's completely devastated, and he's blaming your Delta Force assignment for pushing her over the edge. When I managed to reach my father later that day, his voice was filled with raw anguish and rage. Alexandra, your mother hasn't slept in months knowing you're out there doing God knows what with those killers. She lies awake every night expecting a call that you've been killed or captured. Dad, I'm trained for this. I'm leading the most elite soldiers in the world. Leading killers! His voice cracked with emotion. You've become something unnatural, something no mother should have to watch. Your mother is in a mental hospital because her daughter has chosen violence over love. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent mission alert, and I had to end the call to coordinate tactical operations that I couldn't discuss with anyone outside my unit. When I called back hours later, my father's voice was cold and final. Alexandra, I need you to resign from whatever unit you're in. I need you to come home and be the daughter your mother needs before she dies from worry. Dad, I can't abandon my operators and my mission responsibilities. Your responsibilities? His voice was filled with disgust. What about your responsibility to the woman who gave birth to you? Are those soldiers more important than your own mother's sanity? That's when he delivered the ultimatum that would define our relationship forever. Alexandra, If you don't resign from this military madness and come home to be the woman we raised, you are no longer welcome in this family. You're choosing strangers over blood. The manipulation was staggering. They'd weaponized my mother's mental health, transforming her inability to accept my career into a psychiatric crisis for which I was responsible. 2 weeks later, the situation escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. I received an official message through military channels that my family had contacted the Department of Defense Inspector General, claiming I was being held against my will in a dangerous, cult-like military unit. My commanding officer, Colonel Williams, called me into his secure office. "Kane, I've received some highly unusual complaints from your family through official channels. They're claiming you've been brainwashed by special operations culture and requesting immediate intervention to extract you from what they call military extremism." I stared at him, realizing the full scope of their interference. "Sir, my family disapproves of my special operations career and is attempting to force me to resign through false official complaints." "That's an extremely serious accusation, Captain." "Yes, sir, it is." He studied my psychological evaluations and performance records, then looked up. "Your operational effectiveness has been flawless. Your team loyalty is unquestionable, and your tactical leadership has saved lives. But these family interventions through official channels create complications for your security clearance." The investigation that followed was conducted while I continued leading classified operations. Military psychiatrists evaluated my mental state extensively. My personal relationships were scrutinized. My commitment to special operations was questioned. All because my family had decided that if they couldn't convince me to leave Delta Force, they'd make the military question my psychological fitness for elite service. 8 months into my Delta Force assignment, the warfare against my career became systematic and reached into the highest levels of Special Operations Command. It started with subtle interference I initially dismissed as family desperation. My security clearance reviews faced unusual scrutiny. Questions were raised about my family's psychological stability during routine evaluations. Then I discovered the devastating scope of their campaign. My teammate, Sergeant Major Rodriguez, pulled me aside after a successful hostage rescue operation. "Ma'am, I need to tell you something that's going to piss you off. Someone claiming to be your mother has been calling military family support networks, saying you've been brainwashed into becoming a killer and need psychiatric intervention." My blood turned to ice. "What kind of calls?" "She contacted the Special Operations Family Readiness Group, claiming you'd been writing disturbing letters about combat missions and that your elite training was turning you into someone dangerous. She suggested the military should evaluate your mental health for the safety of your unit." I sat in my secure quarters that night, reviewing classified mission reports while processing the reality that my family was actively sabotaging my special operations career through military support channels. The attacks escalated rapidly. Tyler called me through official military communications 2 weeks later, his voice filled with anguish and shame. "Alexandra, I'm so sorry. They forced me to do something horrible." "What did they make you do?" "Dad threatened to disown me and destroy my college prospects if I didn't write a letter to your commanding officer. They made me say I was worried about your mental state, that you'd been writing disturbing things about killing people, and seemed to be losing your humanity in special operations." My hands trembled as I ended the call. My own brother had been coerced into filing false reports about my psychological fitness through official military channels. The following morning, Colonel Williams summoned me to his classified conference room. He was a decorated special operations veteran who'd always supported my tactical leadership, but his expression was deeply troubled. "Kane, I've received multiple concerning reports about your personal situation through both family support and command channels. Family members expressing worry about your psychological state, claims that special operations training has made you mentally unstable and potentially dangerous." "Sir, those reports are completely fabricated. My family is attempting to force me out of Delta Force by undermining my psychological fitness for elite operations." "That's an extraordinarily serious accusation, Captain." "Yes, sir, and it's happening while I'm successfully leading classified operations that protect American lives." He studied my mission reports and psychological evaluations, then looked up. "Your operational performance has been exceptional. Your team depends on your leadership, and your tactical decisions have prevented multiple catastrophes. But these family concerns create complications for your security clearance and unit assignment." The investigation that followed was conducted while I continued leading the most sensitive military operations in the world. Special operations psychiatrists evaluated me extensively. My personal relationships were scrutinized. My commitment to elite service was questioned. All because my family had decided that if they couldn't convince me to leave special operations, they'd make the military believe I was psychologically unfit for elite duty. But I had powerful allies fighting for me. Colonel Santos, now working at JSOC headquarters, connected me with the Special Operations Legal Affairs Office. "This is more serious than family interference," the military attorney explained. "When families weaponize support channels to undermine special operations, it threatens unit cohesion and mission effectiveness." Meanwhile, I learned my family had expanded their campaign across the military community. My mother had contacted Jennifer's husband's law firm, asking them to research legal methods for extracting military personnel from dangerous assignments. My father had reached out to family friends in defense contracting, spreading concerns about my psychological deterioration and asking them to monitor my military status. They transformed my elite military service into a mental health crisis within their professional networks. At social gatherings and business events, I became the cautionary tale about what happens when daughters choose special operations over traditional femininity. The breaking point came when I discovered they'd contacted Tyler's girlfriend, who worked for a veteran support organization, trying to convince her that dating someone with a quote, psychologically unstable sister in Delta Force was dangerous for her career and personal safety. The decision to expose my family's sabotage campaign came after they crossed a line that threatened national security operations. My intelligence liaison, Captain Sarah Kim, approached me after a classified mission debrief with information that changed everything. "Ma'am, your family contacted the FBI's Counterintelligence Division. They filed an official report claiming you've been psychologically compromised by special operations training and that your access to classified missions represents a security risk to national defense." My father had reached into federal counterintelligence, attempting to convince the FBI that I was a security threat due to psychological instability, to destroy my Delta Force career and elite operations responsibilities. I requested an immediate meeting with the commanding general of Joint Special Operations Command. His office was located in a secure facility that didn't officially exist, walls lined with mission photos from decades of classified operations. His expression was grave as I explained the full scope of my situation. "General Morrison, my family is conducting a systematic campaign to end my special operations career through false accusations and federal interference. I have documentation of their coordinated efforts across multiple security channels." He reviewed my file, the JSOC legal affairs analysis, and the timeline of security incidents. After 90 minutes of silence, he looked up with steely determination. "Captain Kane, what you're describing is an attack on special operations integrity and classified mission security. This threatens our operational effectiveness and cannot be tolerated." General Morrison didn't just believe me, he launched an immediate command-wide investigation. Within days, special operations security specialists were interviewing personnel across multiple classified units. They discovered a pattern of false reports, coordinated timing, and clear evidence of malicious intent to undermine special operations capabilities. The investigation revealed that my family had contacted 23 different military and federal offices, 12 security organizations, and multiple personnel in sensitive special operations positions. They'd created an extensive security paper trail of fabricated concerns, while never seeking legitimate professional help for their supposed worries about my mental health. JSOC Legal Affairs recommended we make the case public to prevent future incidents with other special operations personnel. "This sets a dangerous precedent," the chief legal officer explained. "If families can sabotage special operations careers through false security reports, it undermines our entire elite military structure." We contacted Michael Rodriguez, a defense journalist with Military Times, who specialized in special operations affairs. When I spoke to him via secure video link from our classified facility, I felt the weight of ending my family's privacy while protecting operational security. "This story transcends personal family conflict," Michael said after reviewing our documentation. This is about the vulnerability of special operations personnel to domestic psychological warfare that can compromise the most sensitive military missions. The decision to go public required approval from the highest levels of Special Operations Command since it involved classified units and security protocols. I spent 5 sleepless nights weighing the consequences while continuing to lead critical missions. Going public meant burning bridges permanently. It meant admitting to the world that my own family had tried to destroy my special operations career. But it also meant protecting other elite operators from similar attacks. The article published on a Tuesday morning. The headline read, "When Families Wage War on Special Operations Careers, the Hidden Battle Facing Elite Military Personnel." Within hours, my secure communications exploded with messages from across the special operations community. Fellow Delta operators shared their own stories of family sabotage. Special Forces personnel reached out with support. Elite military personnel told similar tales of families trying to force them out of special operations through manufactured security crises. One message stood out from Major Lisa Park, a Special Forces commander. "Alexandra, my family attempted similar security interference during my SF selection. You've given us all permission to speak about this abuse." But the response that mattered most came from General Morrison himself. "Captain Kane, your courage in exposing this vulnerability has strengthened special operations security and protected countless elite personnel. This exemplifies warrior leadership." The military's official response was swift and decisive. New protocols were established for handling family-initiated security concerns about special operations personnel. 3 years after going public, my testimony before the Senate Armed Services Committee changed special operations family policy forever. Sitting at that witness table in my dress uniform, now wearing the silver oak leaves of a lieutenant colonel, I felt the weight of every elite operator who'd been silenced by family sabotage. "Honorable Senators," I began, "what happened to me represents a critical vulnerability in our most sensitive military capabilities. When families can weaponize security channels to undermine special operations personnel, we don't just lose individual operators. We compromise classified missions and threaten our nation's most elite military effectiveness." Senator Rodriguez leaned forward. "Colonel Kane, how widespread is this problem within our special operations forces?" Since my story became public, over 900 special operations personnel from all service branches have contacted me with similar experiences. Family interference with elite military careers represents a significant and underreported threat to our national security capabilities. The hearing lasted 14 hours across 3 days. I presented documented cases from multiple classified units, policy recommendations developed by special operations experts, and testimony from other affected elite personnel. Congressional staff had prepared extensive exhibits showing the scope of the problem across different special operations communities and security classifications. During a particularly intense exchange, Senator Thompson asked, "Colonel Kane, what would you say to families who genuinely fear their children's involvement in the most dangerous military operations?" I looked directly into the cameras, knowing my testimony was being broadcast to military families worldwide. I would say that Special Operations Service requires family support, not family sabotage. When families undermine their children's elite military careers, they're not protecting them, they're attacking the very warriors who protect our nation's most critical interests. The committee room, filled with special operations families and veterans, erupted in sustained applause. 6 months later, President Harrison signed the Elite Military Personnel Protection Act into law. The legislation created federal penalties for intentional false reporting against special operations personnel, established independent review processes for family-initiated security concerns, and provided legal protection for elite military personnel facing domestic interference. The signing ceremony was held at the Pentagon, with hundreds of special operations personnel and their families in attendance. As President Harrison handed me the signing pen, she said, "Colonel Kane, your courage has strengthened our special operations capabilities and protected thousands of elite warriors." But the most meaningful vindication came 9 months later. I was selected for promotion to colonel and appointment as commanding officer of Joint Special Operations Command, making me the youngest woman ever to command America's most elite military forces. The promotion ceremony was held at our classified headquarters, where my journey in special operations had begun. During the ceremony, General Morrison spoke words that healed years of family rejection. Colonel Alexandra Kane exemplifies warrior excellence. Her leadership in special operations, her courage in exposing threats to elite military families, and her unwavering dedication to protecting our nation's most sensitive capabilities represent the highest ideals of special operations service. The audience included Pentagon officials, special operations commanders, and military leaders who'd worked on the legislation. But the person who mattered most was Major David Chen, my fellow special operations officer and now my fiancé, standing in his Special Forces uniform with tears of pride in his eyes. After the ceremony, a young special operations trainee approached me nervously. "Ma'am, I wanted to thank you. My parents tried to get me removed from special operations training last year, using similar tactics to your family. Because of your case and the new protections, Command immediately recognized their false reports." That evening, David and I celebrated at our favorite secure location near base. During dinner, he handed me an envelope that had been delivered through official special operations channels. Inside was a letter from Tyler, written on his military academy letterhead where he now served as an ROTC instructor. "Alexandra, I've spent 4 years working with military families and studying the psychology of service, and I finally understand what our parents did to you was systematic harassment designed to destroy your military career. They tried to break you because they couldn't control your choices. I was complicit in that harassment and I'm deeply ashamed. Working with military families has taught me about service to something greater than personal comfort. You were serving our nation's most critical needs while we were serving our own fears and prejudices. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm proud of who you became despite us, not because of us. I hope someday I can earn the right to be your brother again." I read the letter 3 times, emotions flooding through me that I had kept buried for years. Anger, hurt, hope, and something that might have been the beginning of healing. A.C. Moore. 2 weeks later brought extraordinary news. The Secretary of Defense's office called with a special request. They wanted me to lead a new task force, developing policies to protect special operations families from domestic interference across all elite military units. During the press conference announcing the task force, a journalist asked, "Do you regret exposing your family's actions?" I thought carefully before answering. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that they couldn't see special operations service as honorable. But I don't regret protecting other elite warriors from the same abuse. Sometimes serving your country means choosing your mission over your comfort. The task force's work would eventually protect thousands of special operations families, but the real victory was knowing that no other elite operator would face what I had faced, defending America's most sensitive interests, while their own family waged war against their service through security channels. 7 years later, I stood at the podium of a military academy graduation ceremony as the commanding officer of Joint Special Operations Command, during the most significant address of my career. The auditorium was filled with the families of new special operations officers, all celebrating their children's commitment to elite military service. David sat in the front row with our 4-year-old daughter Emma, who wore a tiny replica of my special operations uniform, complete with miniature airborne wings. She'd insisted on matching Mama for the ceremony where I would address the next generation of elite warriors and their families. Among the graduating officers was my sister Jennifer's daughter Sarah, who had chosen to follow in my footsteps despite her family's initial resistance. As I looked out at the audience, I saw Jennifer and her husband in the crowd, their faces filled with pride and something that looked like understanding. "Families of our newest special operations officers," I began, my voice carrying across the packed auditorium. "Today your sons and daughters join the most elite military community in the world. They will face dangers you cannot imagine, undertake missions you will never know about, and sacrifice in ways that most people will never understand. Your role is not to limit their service, but to support their dedication to something greater than themselves." As I spoke about the honor of special operations service, I caught sight of movement near the back of the auditorium. My parents had quietly entered and taken seats in the last row, their faces reflecting years of struggle with accepting my choices. The moment that changed everything came during the ceremony's conclusion. When Sarah crossed the stage to receive her special operations qualification, her grandfather, my father, stood up and began applauding. Through tears, he watched his granddaughter follow the path he had once tried to destroy for his own daughter. After the ceremony, as families gathered for photos and celebrations, I approached Sarah with David and Emma. When her Special Forces colonel saw me approaching, he immediately snapped to attention and saluted. "Ma'am, Elite Operations Commander," he said with unmistakable respect. "It's an honor to serve under your command." The moment was captured by military photographers, and I saw my parents watching from across the room, finally witnessing the respect and recognition that my military service had earned. Later that evening, as families celebrated at the reception, my parents approached hesitantly. My father, now showing his age but carrying himself with new dignity, spoke first. "Alexandra, we've spent 7 years learning what we should have known from the beginning. We were wrong. About everything." My mother's eyes were filled with tears as she looked at Emma playing with other military children. "We thought we were protecting you from a dangerous life. We didn't understand we were trying to prevent you from becoming exactly who you were meant to be." Jennifer joined us, holding Sarah's hand. "She wants to be just like Aunt Alexandra," Jennifer said, her voice filled with pride rather than the fear I'd once heard. "And I couldn't be happier about that." That night, David and I walked through the academy grounds with Emma, past the monuments honoring warriors who'd given everything for their country. Looking at those memorial stones, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. Messundiz. 6 months after that ceremony, I received news that would define the rest of my legacy. The president asked me to establish the National Elite Military Family Support Institute, a new organization dedicated to strengthening support systems for special operations families and preventing the kind of interference I'd experienced. Our first initiative was a comprehensive program for special operations personnel facing family opposition to their elite military service. We provided specialized counseling, legal protection, and advocacy services designed specifically for the unique challenges of special operations families. The program's success was remarkable. Within 5 years, we'd helped over 6,000 special operations families navigate conflicts between traditional expectations and elite military service. Many families learned to understand and support their children's special operations careers for the first time. The moment that completed my healing came at our 5th annual Elite Military Family Unity Awards ceremony. As I stood at the podium recognizing outstanding special operations families, I saw my parents in the front row, wearing buttons with my military photo and the words, "Proud Special Operations Family." After the ceremony, my father approached with Emma in his arms. "She wants to be a warrior like her mama," he said, his voice filled with the pride that had been missing for so many years. "And what do you think about that, Grandpa?" I asked. He looked at me with eyes that finally held understanding. "I think she should follow her heart, just like her mother did. I'm sorry it took me so long to see that your heart led you exactly where you belonged." That night, as Emma fell asleep wearing her tiny special operations uniform, I realized that breaking generational patterns isn't just about choosing your own path. It's about creating space for the next generation to choose theirs. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't proving your family wrong. It's helping them understand that strength comes in many forms, and that love means supporting someone's authentic calling, even when it challenges everything you thought you knew about their potential. My daughter will grow up knowing that she can be anything she chooses to be, including a warrior. And that's a legacy worth every battle I fought to create it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.